Welcome to the Bear Rumble Podcast, your home for everything BHP football. Each week, we dive into the greatest games, preview what's coming next, and share the stories that make Belton Honea Path Bears football special. From legendary coaches to unforgettable moments, this is where Bear Nation comes together. This is the Bear Rumble Podcast.
Welcome to the Bear Rumble Podcast. I'm your host, Kayne Evans, BHP graduate, former Bear player, current assistant statistician, and the curator of ThemBears.com. We're excited to offer something new to Bear fans this season, a place where we can highlight the players who worn the jersey, the coaches who've shaped the program, the teams that have made history, and the community that makes it all possible. This podcast, the website, and everything we do on social media, it all exists for one purpose: to celebrate the players, coaches, and moments that have made Belton Honea Path football what it is. And this podcast in particular is our way of looking back at the games that shaped us, spotlight the present, and dream about the future. Think Games with Names meets South Carolina Friday Night Lights. So with this first episode, we will open with a heavyweight bout, the 2004 Upperstate Championship game, a Black Friday classic, the first ever Upperstate title in BHP history, and I couldn't think of a better way to kick off this podcast than to bring in the guy who cultivated my love of high school football, who has been going to BHP games longer than I've been alive, my dad, DeWayne Evans. Dad's the head statistician for BHP football now, and when we're not arguing about where the ball's marked on Friday nights, he's preaching at Aceyville Baptist Church as pastor. Dad, welcome to the first ever Bear Rumble podcast.
Hey, well, thank you for having me. This is something new for me, and being the old guy in the press box with you, I'm not used to all this new technology.
Yeah, it's new for me too, and it's exciting. It's one of those things I tell everybody about. The reason we do the website, all the social media and all that sort of thing is to really highlight the BHP football players. It's one of the things, being a player in the past, things that we didn't have when we came up, and we just really want the sacrifice that those kids have made to kind of highlight them. So glad you're here. Wow. Excited for this new football season. Maybe even at the end, I'll get your thoughts on what might be coming for the Bears later this year.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Let's set the stage. Let's go back to November 26, 2004, the day after Thanksgiving. The Bears enter the game undefeated, 13-0, while Clinton enters the game in 3. But red hot coming into that Upperstate Championship. They rattled off 7 straight wins after dropping an early one to Newberry, and then a close one to BHP in week 4, 9-7, and then Union County later in the season. This was the day after Thanksgiving, kind of a new territory, but Clinton got here by taking down Chester, Seneca, and then Fairfield Central to earn this rematch between BHP. BHP, leading into this game, really dismantled Wade Hampton. It was the first sighting of what a lot of people called the Bear raid, the air raid for the Bears, really opening up the passing game against Wade Hampton, 59-14. Then they shut out Union 23-0, a revenge game from the year before. Maybe one we'll hit on in the future. And then they got past Greer. They handled Greer pretty easily, 24-7 the week before this Clinton game to set up this really one of the, and we'll talk about this later in the podcast, really, when you think about it, the biggest game in BHP history up to this point. And then, not to mention a little extra on the side, BHP's head coach Wayne Green coming into the game was a Clinton grad, so he knew the Clinton mystique, the history, played for some great Clinton teams, but now leading the Bears against Clinton back here at BHP. So setting up that way, Dad, coming into the game, biggest buzz, like I said, maybe absolutely the biggest game in BHP history so far. What was that buzz you remember coming into the game as that week started?
As you said a while ago, the Riverside game was one that we just kind of manhandled, but then you had Union coming in, and Union had always been that one team that just put a stop to BHP for some reason. And you, even though we knew we had the better team, you still had that feeling in the back of your head, and those nerves were there. And after we just kind of manhandled Union, and then came into, and then you had Greer, who had been winning and had some good players at that time, and then Clinton comes to town, and Clinton, like you said, already had that tradition. And a lot of times tradition can score 1 or 2 touchdowns before the other team ever gets started. But that night it was kind of different. BHP got out there, and they just kind of came out. The buzz for the week, goodness, it was so crazy. Thanksgiving is always a special time for families to get together, but for football, it's always, in high school football, you want to be practicing on Thanksgiving Day. That's just something that's so big. And I think this was one of the first times that I remembered in modern history that BHP was practicing during this time, and it was so much fun. I tell you that back then, if you remember, I was doing a little screen print, and I think I was screen printing every night to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, because there were not enough BHP or Bear apparel out there. People were just asking for it everywhere, and the buzz was everywhere. You ride through Belton, you rode through Honea Path, you go out into the Creightonville and the communities out there, and every church marquee had "How About Them Bears" on it, and it was just so exciting. But yet there was still nerves there leading up to this game, and then right when it started, though, it kind of evened out. You could tell that the Bears were ready to play that Friday night.
Yeah, you're right. That I can remember, we always had growing up, had extended family over on Thanksgiving, and a lot of times it was talk about family and kind of catching up through the year. But the only thing I remember is 100 questions about the football game coming up the next night. There wasn't any family talk with all the people coming over. I wanted to touch on, you're exactly right, with Union and Greer. That Union, if you think back, I know before my time, but even late 90s, early 2000s, the Bears were 12-0 one year hosting Union, and Union came up on maybe a more controversial win, but they won that one. The year before, 2003, they shut out BHP at home. So, and then if you think Greer, that Greer game, most people in the Upstate was expecting that to be Greenville. The week before, Greer and Greenville postponed their Friday night game due to weather. Ended up, I don't think there was any rain in Greenville County, but they actually postponed that game. Actually led a lot of Bear fans to head up to Greenville. We were one of them. We went up to that Greenville-Greer game. And
I remember
just
that
what
night.
A way. Yeah, and you're exactly right. With all those marquees, I remember going to Belton, you have the Wendy's sign and all the street signs and all that. It just shows you the pride that BHP has for the Bear football team.
You're right, and it was really getting, and it was just coming to just an all-time high right there on that Friday night, and everybody was just knowing that, hey, this could be the year that we make it to that special place down in Columbia. And that's what that's what the excitement was about. And I tell you, sometimes you can talk about it, but yet just feeling it's a different story. And that week was just, every day of the week, it just seems like that's all that you talked about. It didn't matter if you went to the Ingles, or back then it was the Bilos, or go in to eat somewhere. All that people were talking about was, hey, BHP and Clinton, this is the year. We're not going to let it slide through our fingers or through our hands. Everybody was so excited about that.
Yep, and kind of leading you somewhere else. Now just think about the actual pregame. Think about, and we'll get to this later on when we actually talk about maybe naming this game, but think about the crowd at this. Clinton, one of those teams, no matter how they're doing, they're going to bring a stadium full. But now just add that to 50 years, 40 years of BHP not seeming to maybe come up short when it really mattered. Now hosting a championship game. I think looking back on the video and just thinking back, I know they were 4 deep on those sidelines, and stands was packed on both sides.
I think I took my blanket over to the stadium real early, a couple of hours beforehand, and I knew I was going to get in because we were helping with the booster club and all. But people were actually putting their seats or their blankets down in the stadium that morning. as sneaking in and trying to make sure they got their seats up there. And where we were sitting, we were just so tight, but yet we were so excited. And it was a cold night too, so it was good to be kind of hunched in there real close together. But yeah, I don't know if I've ever remember seeing that many people at a Belton Honea Path football game since I've been watching for the last 45 years. And it was just unbelievable. And the atmosphere was something that high school football, it should be about. It was about the community, about the kids, and the school spirit from Clinton and Belton Honea Path was there.
You're right, and that's one of the things I wanted to touch on before we actually got to the gameplay was what makes it so special is that pageantry, that pride, that the neighbors that you see both at school, at work, at the grocery store, and then everybody coming together on Friday night. And then it was all about us versus them because they didn't want to be outdone either. They packed out their side. They thought they were going to come in and they thought they had just as much right to win that early one. If you think back to that first game BHP played against Clinton, BHP won on a last-minute touchdown and a 2-point conversion, I believe.
That's right. They kind of thought that we kind of took that one away from them. So they really felt like that they had the better team and that they could beat us. I think they had that kid Reader that was so good. And they really didn't think that we could stop them, but I don't think they realized that we had a couple of special players ourselves.
Yep.
It kind of played in our way there at the end.
And then lastly, last thing before we get into the kickoff, the game ball was parachuted in. I think we've seen that the last couple years on the first game, but it was a special night. They parachuted the ball in. We had live TV going across the Upperstate. Lot of things, and this is one of the things we'll talk about later in the when we get maybe in the second half or something. But this is something BHP's never had to deal with. Never had to deal with practicing on a week where you didn't have school almost. You didn't have to practice. You didn't have to worry about making sure the kids were not staying up too late because they didn't have school and all that sort. And then you go with all the media requests and lining up somebody to parachute the ball in. It's just all that extra stuff that I know coaches hate, but it's things that come with big high school football like this.
Well, one of the things that's different today and even though they still have the newspapers and all, but back then, that was where everybody got their information. It wasn't social media like it is today. You had the newspapers, and BHP or Clinton was in every newspaper in the upstate, Greenville News, the Anderson Independent. Every day there was an article about the football game. I'm not sure, and I don't remember if there was any other teams in Anderson County playing at that time while we were playing, because I remember that night I saw a lot of different Letterman's jackets from up toward Williamston, Palmetto, and different schools that were there watching, and everything was focused on the game at Belton Honea Path that Friday night.
That's right. All right, let's jump into gameplay. I think this is what really is what we want to highlight. First quarter, let's get into it. Coming into the game, everybody looked to these two defenses. BHP was coming into the game giving up something like 5.5 points per game, something absurd like that, with 4 or 5 shutouts they had between this game and the state championship game. I think the season average for points actually went down. And then Clinton, on the other hand, was just as great. The only game that they really were scored on was that Union loss. The other ones, 9-7 against BHP. It was a low-scoring game, that first game that they lost to Newberry. Everybody looked at what these defenses can do against. Both teams had their calling card was the run game. Whose unstoppable force was going to get stopped by immovable object, one of those kind of days. And it kind of seemed like that's how it was going to start, and that's how it did start for BHP.
Well, I think, like you just said, everybody thought BHP, and it was because of Coach Green. Coach Green was one of those three plays, and we'd either score, and once we scored once or twice, then he'd go into that defensive mode, and he knew that he could handle anybody else. And that's kind of what it was on the offensive side of the ball. But we also, everybody that knew about Belton Honea Path and the Bears that year knew that we had some great receivers, Mario Glenn and all the other guys that were back there, Kyle Coleman but we had the one thing that nobody realized. They knew that O'Brien Clinchscales could run, but they didn't understand how good he could really throw. And I think it really showed that first touchdown.
Yeah. I think this game, I don't think it was a breakout game because we saw him throw against Wade Hampton. We saw him throw, but when
he didn't have to throw because Coach Green would get a lead and he would just go into that defensive mode using the offense.
That's right. But and that's one thing that came across in the first quarter, first half really, but that first quarter, BHP offense couldn't move the ball.
That's right.
The Clinton defense was locking them down.
They were
really not having any luck on offense. And then you look over on the Clinton side, they had some opportunities. They got down close to the red zone a couple times, 4th down and inches in the red zone, and the BHP defense held them.
How many times in that first half did we hold inside? They got down to the 20. It just seemed like they could move from 20 to 20, but never could get down there. Was it twice in that first half that they got down there and we held them?
Yeah, twice in the first half. But one, I think they were like third and 1 or something like that, and held them on 2 consecutive downs.
Matter of fact, it wasn't even 1; it was probably inches, and that was you're right. Yeah, that was,
and I think that was
when you kind of started feeling good.
Yeah, I think that was one of the comments that the coach for Clinton made after the game was they had opportunities, but they literally came up inches short, and. I know that depending on what shade of red you might have been wearing that night, you might have felt you came up inches short, or you held them inches short or something like that. But
that's right.
That first quarter really showed off. It gave everybody kind of confirmation that both of these defenses were special. And then it may have, from looking outside in, we were able to rewatch the game a couple weeks ago together, and it just showed that they had to be something, a second punch. You know what I mean? BHP didn't show that in this first quarter, didn't show it a good bit in the second quarter, but Clinton thought their run game, they saw some opportunities there, but in that first quarter, all those opportunities came up short.
Yeah, and they had that run game, and they knew that they could do it. They had done it with everybody else. They had been so successful with everybody else. But I don't think, even though they had played some great teams, I don't think they saw a defense like they came up against that night. BHP would bend a little bit, but when it got down to the nitty gritty and they had to do it, I think BHP had more desire and they had more want to than Clinton did.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that didn't show on tape, but I think we knew it, was that outside speed can really close down those running lanes. I think everybody knew that defensive line, Kyle McLean, Andrew Jenkins, Joseph Groves, DeWayne Rainey, those defensive linemen could stop could stop any run game, and also had the ability to pressure passes. Then with Ronell Harper, linebacker, Josh Tavernier, linebacker. But one of the things that really showed up in this first half was those Trevance Jackson, that kind of spur, Bobby Joe, Stewart, Mario Glenn, Stephen Culberson, all those kind of secondary that you wouldn't expect to make those kind of tackles, but have to on those outside runs. That really showed up for me on at least the first half. I think that defensive line kind of turned it up that second half, though.
Well, I think BHP just kind of put it in the box, and they just said they dared Clinton throw because they knew they couldn't throw, and that kind of helped us. They were just one-sided when it come to that, and like you said, the speed that we had on the outside and then the secondary was unbelievable, and then how our defensive line would hold up Clinton so often, and those linebackers would come up and make the play.
Yeah. Well, I'll touch on that. There were some plays that I want to. So let's jump over to the second quarter. It looked to be the same, except for the Bears did start opening up a little bit with that secondary punch, that what I was talking about. They did try to air it out. Just a great pass from O'Brien to Kyle Coleman. Got the Bears down to the 10, but the Bears just couldn't do anything once they got down there. Just like Clinton did early in the first quarter, the Bears got down inside the 10-yard line and couldn't come up with any points. At this point, It's one of those, just like the first game, 9-7, points were going to be at a premium. Might have been a little uneasy. I don't know in the stands how you're feeling after that, coming up short on that first drive in the second quarter.
It was very much, you had seen Clinton move the ball up and down the field and not score, but then you saw us get an opportunity and nothing come of it. You said, okay, we can't shoot ourselves. We got to take advantage of these opportunities. And you start second guessing yourself or in the stands, but thank goodness we were in the stands and the guys on the field wasn't second guessing themselves. They knew that they were going to come out on top.
That's right. So from there, it was a lot more of the same defensive struggle, three and outs, not very many first downs. But then with 3 minutes left in the half, the Bears are on their 41-yard line. So O'Brien drops back. It's a third down and kind of long. And O'Brien drops back. Mario Glenn streaks on that Clinton sideline and gets hit literally in stride. This is something I talked to you about when we were watching this. I think Mario might have been surprised with how perfect of a pass this was. Hitting completely in stride, he bobbled it a little bit, but got it under control, goes for 59 yards and puts the Bears up 6-0 after a blocked PAT. What were you feeling there?
Well, at that point you're thinking, wow, let's go. And man, this is great. We can throw the ball and we've scored. And I knew our defense. I really felt like that, just like I'd seen all year, that if we could get 6 or 12 points, man, we could take over, because I didn't think Clinton would be able to score that. And they wasn't going to score that many points running the ball because we could shut them down. But again, after scoring, I was excited. But boy, when we missed that PAT, I said, oh, Lord, is that going to come back to haunt us? That's what was in the stands. Is that PAT going to beat us in the end? Is Clinton going to score and it's going to be 7-6? That's what I got to thinking. And that's the kind of thoughts you have when you're in the stands. You know that you got the team, but yet those thoughts, because you haven't made it past this game yet. And we're, in our history. And those things seem to just come, those thoughts haunt you a little bit during the game. And I think that's what people in the stands were thinking too.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I saw on that play, they were giving Mario almost a 10-yard cushion. He cleared that cushion, still was about 5 yards behind the defender. Literally the only thing you couldn't give up on as a Clinton defender is that long ball. But I guess speed kind of beats anything. What a connection there. I think we all knew Mario was that speed receiver.
Yes.
We had some other guys, like you said, Kyle Coleman, Brian Miller. We'll talk about Brian Miller in a minute, but
Brian Miller, yeah.
We knew when a long ball was going to hit, it was probably going to be Mario, and it was such a great to see that to start with that 3 minute and 3 minutes left in the half. I know Coach Blackston now talks about it, but Coach Green was always hammered this so much, was that 4 minutes before the half and 4 minutes after the half, how you can really capture that momentum. And it was that really, and just think, I can remember the stands. I remember just feeling the wave of noise come down on that stadium, almost a relief a little bit, not quite all the way, but kind of just hitting home there.
Well, you did, and because you knew that you had the defense that could hold them out of the end zone, and that's what we were hoping for. And that touchdown just kind of helped a little bit, but we still kind of had that little pause in there when we missed that PAT, when we got it blocked. So, but hey, it turned around. Yeah. We made some more big plays.
Yeah. So next, the ensuing kickoff, Clinton takes it for a solid return, takes it past the midfield, and really kind of deflates that crowd a little bit. Kind of worried that setting them up with good field position, maybe they could score before half. But 2 plays later, the Clinton runs kind of a speed option, trying to get that Shaquan Reeder out on the edge. Mm-hmm. The quarterback was kind of hurried, and a bad pitch out to Reeder. And watching the film back, I saw Ronell Harper. It looked like he had his eyes on a touchdown. And next thing you know, Stephen Culberson falls on it. But the Bears take over about midfield, really to another igniting of that BHP crowd, getting that ball back, closing down that Clinton offense for one last time of first half.
Well, like you said, it was the beginning of that second half, and when they made that big return, they were getting a little bit of that excitement back. But then when this happened, it kind of brought it back over on the BHP side, and we knew that momentum was going to stay there for a while then.
Yep. So next play, I think it's the next play, the Bears go deep again. Like I think this is one of the things that just looking back, you can kind of see that those how those wheels were turning on maybe the coaches on the sidelines, that feeling blood was in the water kind of thing. Go deep. Trevance Jackson, maybe one of the greatest catches of maybe that year. He the ball is on pretty much in the Clinton defensive back's hands. He goes up and over and rips the ball away from the Clinton defender and takes it for 43 yards down to the 5-yard line. And what a way to just set that offense up. Points are going to be at a premium. Maybe the throw was a little behind him, but really going up and competing. I think that's one of the things that you saw in that play.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt. And like you said, it was one of the big catches that I remember back then. Trevance he was one of those speedsters, and he always had a little excitement. He probably had a few words after he caught that one too. Just come over the sideline, didn't he?
Yeah. Luckily he caught it on the BHP sideline, so that he didn't have to run through the Clinton players. But yep, down to the 5-yard line. 3 plays later, who would have guessed? 3 straight run plays, but Chase Robinson punches it in to put the Bears up 12-0. We did talk about we missed the first extra point, so you think you go for 2 to get back those 2, do a reverse and then pass back to the quarterback, but that comes up short. You can't connect on that, so the Bears up 12-0 going into halftime.
Well, we're feeling pretty happy right now with all this going on. Everything that's happening, we feel good about it, and everything. And one thing up to this game, up to this time in the game, you've been mentioning a lot of names, and not that one, Chase Robinson. Chase Robinson was a great running back, and I tell you what, he was a team player. You go back all the way back into when did he move? In y'all's junior year or something like that? And
his sophomore year, sophomore year, he moved into BHP, wasn't eligible to play right away, but practiced every single day with the team, knowing he wouldn't be able to play that year, but allowed him to get those reps with the team, and then his junior year lead BHP in rushing yards.
He was one of those, and he did such a great job. And that's one of the things, these games that you're playing right now, these close games that you're playing against Clinton and all like that. I think you have to also go back and just talk about how these games were won in practice, because y'all practiced hard against each other, and you had to go against some of the best defensive or offensive players all year long, and that got y'all ready for these type games that you're playing right now against Clinton.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's one of the things whenever anybody asks me, my humble opinion, what made those teams special, those coaches weren't afraid to have those when that senior class came in. They weren't afraid to have those freshmen line up and practice against those juniors and seniors, those upperclassmen, and really started off a foundation of toughness, a foundation of teamwork. That was one thing that I think, going through some things last year with the 20th anniversary of the state championship, just thinking about all of the changes that happened preseason. Brian Miller was the starting running back, and he was asked to move over to defensive back and wide receiver. Nowadays, you even hint at that player's going to be going to another team.
Unfortunately, they'll be in the transfer portal, I guess you'd say, and they'd be at another team. But yeah, that whole team, you could name every one of the players that you had on the roster was very unselfish, and they gave it all. And I think that's what made that team so special. And that's what made you get to this game against Clinton. And it kind of gave you the advantage, I think.
That's right. So with that flurry right before halftime, even though the Bears are up 12-0, it's one of those. Well, let's go over the stats first, and then we'll talk about maybe what we're feeling. At the halftime, BHP only had 3 first downs. Think about that. 3 first downs, but nearly 200 yards of offense. So they were on pace for 400 yards of offense, but only 3 first downs. And then Clinton, 86 rushing yards. Maybe they still see that there's opportunity there, at least in the aggregate with those numbers. turnovers, but not a single completed pass. I think we all expected that, but being down, I guess it was late in the first half being down, but you would think coming into a game, having some extra preparation time without the school and everything, you may have tried to do something through the air, but not a single completed pass by Clinton. And then, like I said, going back with that flurry before half, we feel good being up 12-0, but as we talked about earlier in the what we were talking about, Clinton had that mystique. They had been here before. Those somehow, I can't quantify it, but those championship rings are always, those championship banners are always somehow in the back of both their and their opponent's mind. And some weird things can happen when that tradition comes flying around.
There's no doubt about it. I think a lot of times that tradition can be good for a touchdown or two in a football game, especially when you get into the championship series. And, Clinton had been there many, many, many times. And they really felt like, hey, we're just down 2 touchdowns. And with Reeder, they felt like they could score at any point or any place on the field. So they still felt like they had an opportunity to win the football game.
Yep.
But now I'm going to tell you, go back. You said the stats. Thank goodness they didn't have the stats up on a big board somewhere because the fans saw 12-0. That's what they saw. If they actually saw how BHP wasn't running the ball and how the stats were really outside of the rushing stats, which BHP had pretty much dominated all year, that night was all in favor of Clinton, I think we'd been even more worried than we were.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think sometimes coming through that season outside of BHP, a lot of people might have thought that passing game wasn't actually there. It may be like a mirage or something like that. But and with only 3 first downs, I think BHP, what they're known for are those long, eat up the clock drives, and to only have 3 first downs in that first half.
Yeah,
there might be some things kind of under the surface that would make you a little uneasy if you were a Bear fan at halftime.
Yeah, I mean, it was, but yet we knew that we felt good about not only the offense, what they had shown us and where we'd scored a couple of touchdowns, but we really felt good about our defense. We felt like that nobody could score against their defense. So we were sitting up there feeling pretty good.
Yep, so let's jump into that second half. So third quarter opens, another defensive stalemate, some 3-and-outs from both teams. And then Clinton goes 3-and-out, forced to punt with about just under 9 minutes left in the third quarter. And then Ronell Harper crashes through, literally, I don't think he was blocked, but crashes through the punt block and blocks the punt, and Trevance Jackson recovers it at the 14. And at this point, I think all Bear fans are kind of saying that if we score right here, it could be all the way but over. And I think that's one of the things that
right then was to go ahead and score. I mean, we were at the 14-yard line or something like that.
Yeah, 14.
Yeah, and I thought if we could just score right here, man, it would be. Because at that point, we knew that, I'll be honest with you, we were pretty bashed as far as fans, knowing that there wasn't too many people in the state of South Carolina in any classification that could score 3 touchdowns on BHP's defense. So we felt real good if we could get that third touchdown.
Yeah, nobody had. The most they gave up.
And we knew that if we could get that one, it was. You could go ahead and, as they used to say, the fat lady could sing, up in the stands, and that's what we felt like. But yet, then things just didn't turn out the way we wanted to, and so we got a little nervous again in the stands.
But with this block, I think this highlights something that we always talk about this team's defense, and we always talk about the offense doing enough and the run game, and then in the playoffs, the passing game. But the special teams, especially the punt block, the punt defense and kickoff returns, really is a understatement, focused upon aspect of this team. One thing, and I think we're Gamecock fans, what we see in Beamer ball, the focus on putting starters, especially defensive starters, on these teams, on these special teams, really gave BHP an upper hand when it came to punt block, kickoff return, that sort of thing.
You had, I think it's been a long time and I'm getting old, but back then, you think about your defensive back guys and your punt return guys, Brian Miller, Trevance Jackson, those guys, Mario Glenn, they were speedsters, and they were one of those that, like you said, they've already shown. We've had some big plays in this game during this game, but they were one of those that could break those kickoff returns and do something. But on the punt return, the punt blocks. I mean, you had people like Ronell Harper, who was just a monster at linebacker, going through it. And I don't remember that year how many punts, but we had several punts that were blocked that year.
Punts and kick and field goals.
Yeah, and field goals. I mean, it was a big thing, and you got to realize too, and that was not something that you really spent a whole lot of time on. But like you said, the coaches knew where to put the guys, and they would put a lot of starters out there. And a lot of times you put some of your reserves in and just try to get playing time. But I think the coaches saw the importance of that, and we had some real good football players out there on those kickoff returns and punt returns,
and late in the games.
Yes,
and a lot of times in the games, you know who they have? O'Brien Clinkscale fielding punts. Like, how many times do you ever see a quarterback, your starting quarterback, fielding punts on a punt return? But I think that's just a testament.
How many times do you see a starting quarterback doing anything but playing quarterback? But when you got O'Brien Clinkscale, he had the S up under his shirt. Superman. He can do anything.
Yep. So with that, the Bears take over on the 14, go three runs, I believe, and then missed a field goal. We talk about the special teams on the punt block, and then we have a special team blunder on a missed field goal, and back to that 12-0. Is this the time Clinton escapes, and are they able to put something together? But with that takeover, Clinton takes over at that missed field goal spot, and they actually string together a few solid plays, a couple first downs, and then they attempt their first completed pass late in the third quarter. But another third down and short. We talked about this early in the first quarter, but now back to in the third quarter, third down and short. And maybe this could be, watching the game again, I think this may at least be one of the top plays of the whole game. Huge push. That interior defensive line was playing 2 yards deep. And then next thing you know, Ronell Harper, chest to chest with the running back, disrupts the handoff. That interior line push disrupts the handoff. Clinton fumbles. They do recover, but with a 5-yard loss. So they go from third down and short, feeling like they are able to move the ball, maybe have some momentum, and now they're backed up to fourth and 5 in a place that they don't want to be.
Well, I think, again, what it just goes to show you, and you got to give some credit back to your coaches. Coach Williams, the defensive coordinator at that time, he was always one that could put you guys in the spots that you needed to be in. And if you would just listen to what they were saying, he would have you where the ball was going to be. And I think that was a great indication in that play right there, where everybody was where they were supposed to be, and it all happened. And you were able to not only just penetrate the line of scrimmage, but you had the guys right where the ball was going to be, and it paid off in our favor.
Yeah, and this is another one, kind of the toughness of both of these teams. I think a lot of times we even see it with Coach Blackson and coach teams. Coach Blackson would love to line up and run the ball at your face 40 times a game. These teams were the same way. I think both teams would have loved to just do inside drills where they're just running and pounding each other, and just shows once again that this defensive line was willing to really take that pounding, but not take the pounding. They were always the aggressor, taking that pounding to the other team.
Well, I think you could tell if you go back and you're able to watch any of the old games during the 2004 season. One of the exciting things, not only in this game, you saw some big hits on both sides of the ball, Clinton and BHP, but all year long, I think you'll notice there were some hitters out there on the offensive block sides and on the defensive side. You would see that, and then our running backs and our receivers were not scared of blitz either. So it was some big hitters on this football team.
That's
and
right.
Also for Clinton.
Yep. So the Bears take the ball back, go to the air. They didn't go down the field. It was more of a screen pass to Brian Miller, but he took it 36 yards on a screen pass, but the electricity that he can create, like I said earlier, converting at the beginning of the year from running back to wide receiver and defensive back. But there were a few games in this season that Brian Miller literally took over himself, both on the defense and offensive side. But this is another one of those points where Brian Miller took a screen pass, goes 36 yards, and puts the Bears in position maybe to score one more time in the third quarter.
That's right. And again, I tell you that one of the things you keep asking how it was up in the stands, we were exhausted. I mean, we would go to sky high, jumping up and down because we're doing this, and then all of a sudden the air would come out of our just come out of the sail, and we'd miss an extra point or something like this, and then we had this right here. We were not playing the game, but the fans had so much energy and so much excitement. They were exhausted after this game, but the adrenaline was still there. So.
Yep. So even with that 36-yard pass, the Bears get down close to the red zone again, but come up again with no points. They go for it on 4th and long, take a shot to the end zone, but the pass comes up incomplete. And once again, the Bears come up short and with no points, 12 to nothing late in the third quarter.
Yeah, the clock wasn't running fast enough. I can tell you that. Even though we were a home team, the clock just seemed like it would never get out of that third quarter. Even though we were running the ball, but yet we were ready to get home quick because there was just too much time left for us at this time.
And then the fourth quarter closes. Clinton takes the ball there. They're looking to drive again, and they come up again with a 4th and 1 right as the last play of the quarter. So the Bears once again stone Reader right there in the backfield. It's another one of these 4th and short, 3rd and shorts where there was just a monstrous amount of penetration. And then I know a lot of times we see it even when those running backs are hit in the backfield. A lot of times they can fall forward and get that half a yard, 6 inches. But one thing that came up, especially on those running backs, were when they were hit, they were driven backwards. And that's what happened in this last play of the fourth quarter.
I think you got to realize, too, all year long, Clinton had played, and Reader, when they were 4th and 1 or 4th and inches, they give the ball to Reader, and they got it. There was no doubt that they were going to get these close plays. Well, BHP put like you said, a stone wall up there, and these 4th and 1s were not gimmies anymore. They really had to work for it. And BHP, I don't know how many total, I guess you could probably go back, how many stops they had on 4th and 1 or 3rd and 1 or 3rd and short or 4th and short. BHP had done something to Clinton that they haven't seen all year, and that they were not used to that on that sideline. That's for sure.
Yep. So with that, the third quarter ends. Bears are up 12 to nothing going to the last quarter. I know, like you said, the clock wasn't our friend at that point, but the fourth quarter actually opens with some positive plays. So the Bears move the ball a little bit, but actually stall kind of close to the midfield stripe or a little past it. But then a couple plays into that fourth quarter drive, the Bears are actually penalized. They're backed up to another 3rd and 22. The Bears, even though our passing attack has gotten us some places, I think nobody ever wants to be in 3rd and 22. But with that, O'Brien Cleat-Scales drops back and then hits Brian Miller. We talked about the pass for that hit Mario Glenn in the first half being the perfect pass. This pass is another one of those that could not be thrown a second later, could not be thrown 3 inches shorter, couldn't be thrown 3 inches further. This pass had to be on the money, and exactly that's what it was. O'Brien hits Brian Miller for a 47-yard TD pass on 3rd and 22 to put the Bears up 19 to nothing early in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, we finally got that extra point, and I felt much better after that one. Okay, I knew at that point that we were already making some plans to maybe go down the highway because I felt like our defense could finish this thing out at this point. We got a little bit of relief up in the stands at this point. We were excited, but we got a little bit of relief after we got that extra point.
Yeah, I think that was one of the ones where I think it was a collective sigh. I don't think on the field it was one of those where we knew it was over. They maybe 21 years later we said we would, but I think one of the things that the coaches did so well was keeping all
Yes.
these 15 to 18-year-olds in the moment. There was no,
you're right.
even a couple weeks before, there was never a thought of what's next. It was what's in what's on the plate right then.
Well, you got to realize up in the stands what was taking place is we were realizing that we were fixing to do something or be a part of something that BHP had never been a part of. And the excitement, back in the day when they were Honea Path and Belton, they had made some playoff runs, but we were fixed. The excitement at 19-0 was that's what we were talking about. And we were getting very, very, very excited up there. And the adrenaline was really running through the veins of all the fans. And you got to realize, I don't know how many thousands it was up there, but not a fan had left and not a fan ever exited the stadium until after the game that night.
Yeah, we're talking about 4 decades of BHP football that's never made it this far. Finally, and one thing, doing it on their home field, but we'll get there in a second. But one thing with that pass, that connection to Brian Miller, that was the last pass of the game. The Bears didn't complete didn't attempt another pass. I guess you're up by almost up by 19 points, but. I think one of the things that we see a little later in this fourth quarter, the Bears were fine kind of doing that ground and pound and let the clock work for them.
I know y'all were down. I wonder if Coach, I wonder how many times Coach Trainum or one of the offensive coaches probably asked Coach, can we throw the ball? And I bet he said, nope, you run the ball. I bet if you wouldn't have got another pass on BHP side for no amount of money at all.
That's right. That's right. Then we're talking about, like I said, it turned into classic BHP football. The defense ramped up at this point. I think both the defensive line and those defensive backs knew that they're going to be tested maybe, but then that defensive line just understood that they're going to be able to rush the passer. And as well as this defensive line did against the run, 4 really, those 4 defensive linemen, Kyle McLean, Joseph Groves, DeWayne Rainey, and Andrew Jenkins, their forte was rushing the passer. And I think we see it in this game later, and we see it in the state championship game. When you get to turn those 4 guys loose on the passer, some things start going well for the Bears and going bad for whoever they're playing against.
Well, that was what you saw all night long, and I think that all year long, and I think that's what you saw. And the defensive coaches kind of knew that. Now I got to be, the dad of me and the stands has to realize you calling those 4 names, but I also watched number 67 was like that other down lineman that when you were in that package a lot of times, a whole lot more than you're giving yourself credit for, probably about 50%, if not more, of those defensive plays, you were in there, and it was in that run package that you were there, and that's what was in there. So as a dad, that's what I was looking at up in the stand. You and your mom, me and your mom were up there, and we watched 67 a lot of times. So that's it. And, you were in there a good bit, and that's what I was fixing to ask you. When you were in there and y'all were in there, were y'all really getting excited this time on the field? I mean, talking it up, or what were you saying? What were some of the comments that were coming from the players on the field while y'all were out there making these big plays?
No, I don't think it was there yet. I think we see later when we at the end where we hit those 4 straight plays. But during the game, when I was a big fella, so I was struggling to catch my breath each play. I think it was one of those things we were almost enjoyed hitting and punishing the other team more than making those plays. And I think I do remember there's some of those huge plays that I remember seeing up in the crowd, feeling that wave of sound hit us. I think there was a few moments in this game that you could feel that. And then just like cheering for your teammates, when I think that's one of the things that you might not see in other teams, with how encouraging everybody was for anybody who made plays. There's nobody asking about playing time, asking about stats, looking at stats, trying to pad any of that sort of thing. I think that's one of just that team mentality.
Yeah.
But we get to that fourth quarter, that very last Clinton drive is one of those just, you take a snapshot of 4 plays. I think these 4 plays sum up how great that defense was. 4 straight plays, 2 quarterback hits. The wide receivers were covered, so no receptions. And then the last 2 plays were sacks, losing yards. I know they were looking to pass it and trying to buy time, but the quarterback had no time when he dropped back to pass. And I think that's just one of those things. That defense, it kind of seemed like there was 2 heads to it. There was that time where you got to be that stone wall, and then Coach Williams, Coach Anderson, Coach Coates, they knew when it was time to let that team loose and let them go after and get that, kind of put that win in the bag for us.
I think so. And the one thing that you guys still do, and I know without a doubt, you were wanting that shutout. You were wanting that shutout. That was a big thing, because that was a big notch in your gun there, I guess you could say, getting that shutout for you. And that's what that's why you never let up. You kept working toward that all the way to the end of the game.
That's right. Bears take over with just right around 3 minutes left in the game, drive all the way down to the 9-yard line, and then hit the victory formation. I think this quintessential Coach Green offense, not going to run it up on the team. I know he had a lot of respect for his alma mater, but even making it down to the 9-yard line and taking knees, a classy way to end. I think any team, if you give them the opportunity to finish a game off in the victory formation, they'll take that.
That's it. And that's what it was. And at that time, the fans were just, I don't know if it was many fans that sat down very much. Okay. You sat down at halftime and in between the quarters, but most of it was watched standing up and yelling, and those cowbells that we had and all the noisemakers and everything that was going on. It's just crazy. It was just so wild, and it was so much fun. And when the offense did go into that victory formation, that's when it became real up in the stands. We're going to Williams-Brice. We're fixing to play for a state championship. And, man, it went crazy then.
Yeah, I think, so Bears win 19-0, first ever Upperstate championship. So with this, at that point, nearly 40 years of BHP football, no Upperstate championship at BHP, notching that first, doing it at home, knowing that there was a state championship coming. But I think that's what it's kind of one of those weird parts after the game. You hear Coach Green do the post-game interview. Anybody he would talk to that week, he would make this completely that was his mantra. There's no true relief, I don't know, on the football team side. There was the celebration knowing we won, did something no team had ever done, but there was also those conflicting emotions of that's your last game playing at BHP. That was there was another week, and really in the grand scheme of things, that next week is what was going to be more important than what you've already done up to this point. So it was one of those strange emotion times where you were super excited, wanted to celebrate, but knew you had to slow it down some because there's so much left in front of you.
Well, I think it's just like what the team had mentality all year. Every game you went into, and especially this, it was a business as usual. You got this one done. You enjoyed it Friday night, but you knew coming I think y'all came back on Sunday afternoons for some things, looking at film and things like that. So you knew that it was just for Friday night, Saturday night, and then it was going to come business as usual and being focused on the biggest game of BHP's history.
That's right. And that's with it. That's the game, the 19-0 win over Clinton. First upper state championship in BHP history. Now with that, I think one of the things I want to do when we're looking at these games in the past, there's 2 things that I want us to do, Dad. We're going to give some game awards, and then we're going to name the game. So first, let's talk about game awards. There's 3 awards that I want us to give. We're going to give the player of the game, we're going to give the unsung hero of the game, and then we're going to talk about that most impactful play. I'll let you start with who's your player of the game?
Well, there's no doubt you've got to go back to your quarterback. I mean, O'Brien clean scales, what, 200 and how many yards did he have? 247 or something like that?
Yeah, I think it might have been more than that, but yeah.
Yeah, just some unbelievable amount of passing yards, and I think, and I know you got to have great receivers, but he was putting the ball right where the receivers could catch it. Like you go back, Mario getting that one right in his hands, Brian Miller, and those type things. So I think you've got to almost understand that he has to be your player of the game.
Yeah, yeah, he 59 or 248 yards passing. He was 7 for 10. There was only 3 balls that he threw that hit the ground. And I think I think 2 of them in the first half kind of went through the receiver's hands.
Yeah,
so
I
it
think
wasn't really his
they should have
fault.
been caught. They could have been caught. I mean,
Yeah.
they were in the hands.
All 3 of the BHP touchdowns on third downs, another testament of playing throughout a drive, that sort of thing. But I think I'm right there with you. Coming into this, doing my research, I wanted to give it to one of those defensive players so bad. When rewatching that game, O'Brien is one of those players that jumps off of the screen. It's something special. And I think maybe later in a podcast I'll talk a little bit more about him. But shame that he's not a BHP Hall of Famer. But the things that he did in this game and this season, this game especially, just goes down in BHP history. And I'm right there with you. Player of the game, O'Brien clean scales.
And I think the reason, and yeah, you would like to pull somebody off, but I think you had 12 guys on defense, 12 and 13 people playing defense, and they all played so hard together that made everybody look good. That was one of the great things about our defense in the Clinton game, but all year long, everybody had jobs and everybody was doing their jobs. And when somebody made a big play, people didn't realize that those defensive linemen were taking care of the blockers, and the linebackers were coming up making big plays. So I think that's why. But when you're talking about one big player that kind of turned the whole thing around, it had to be O'Brien clean scales that night.
All right, who's your unsung hero? Who's that guy who didn't get the headlines, didn't get the player of the game, but really made a difference for the Bears that night?
Well, there's just so many of them. I tell you, there's just so many. You got to go back to Chase Robinson. People don't realize the blocks that he made back in the backfield that probably got O'Brien Clinkscale that extra second or two to throw the ball. Okay, when you're thinking on the offensive side, then you think on the defensive side of the ball. There are so many of them out there that could be there. I'm not very good at this one, so I'm gonna have. I'm also a proud father. I always say nobody got credit for number 67 made 3 or 4 tackles, but then he was constantly going in and out. So I have to kind of look on that side. So when you think of as a father's aspect, I look at so many, but there's just so many. I don't know if you could pinpoint just one individual person that was an unsung hero, because there were so many of them tonight that night against Clinton.
Yeah, I was definitely tired running on and off the field. But you're right. There's a couple that I wanted to point out. I think on that offensive side, I don't think these guys get as much credit as the defensive line. That Barry Humphries. Some of you rewatch that. Some of the blocks that he makes downfield to.
How many pancakes did he have that night? There's no telling
right.
how many times the guy that he was blocking. You're right. I mean, you had Barry Humphries, Justin Kyle, Chris Rogers, who's coaching now, and
Brandon Hawkins, Jared Tavernier.
You think about those, and then you go to the tight ends that they're playing. I mean, because it was a big part of what BHP's offense was. So that's what I'm saying. There were just so many people that you just can't pinpoint one person, I think, as far as that, for me anyway.
Yeah. The one I will give the award to, and I think this is the one, he did get a lot of recognition on the defense, but I think this may have been his greatest game, was Ronell Harper. Those tackles he made in the backfield on those short yardage plays, the block punt, and then a lot of people don't remember this or don't realize this. BHP would play with a fullback, especially on those short down yardage, and he would be the fullback and really lay the wood, opening up some of those running holes for Chase Robinson's.
Unless you've hit him, I don't think people realize how hard that rascal could hit. I mean, he was, and how strong he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm giving the unsung hero to Ronell Harper for that one. And then our last award, what's that most impactful play that you had for the game?
Oh, wow. The most impactful play for the game. I might have to go back to when we're up 12-0. And when is that when we hit Brian Miller?
Yep,
With
in the first play of the couple plays into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I think that one there, because I think at that point we were winning, we were there, but when that play happened, I think that's when we just kind of maybe shut the door a little bit tighter on Clinton.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the collective sigh at that point, I think we got over that hump of maybe there was something that Clinton had left. Maybe at that point you kind of realized that it was finally the Bears' time. A couple other options for this one. I think some of those 4th and shorts, I think that one leading into the fourth quarter, that 4th and 1 stop, because that at that point Clinton was making some headway like they had been doing early in the first quarter, where they're going from 20 to 20, making some headway, but stopping them. There's a couple of those third downs. I think some of those defense at the very end, most impactful. I think some of those sacks at the end, but I think you're right. I would either have to go with that first touchdown. I think that was just something to put in the minds of Clinton, that they had to respect that deep ball, which they might not have. They might have still said, if you're going to beat us, you're going to beat us with our passing, and that's what BHP did. But I think I'm going to go right there with you. That fourth quarter, 47-yard touchdown to Brian Miller to put the game away for the Bears.
I think that was big, and that's just one of my plays. But they, like you said, you could go back to, there's so many big plays, and that's what happens when you get in big games like this. They have to be a number of big plays, but you're right. That's one that just stands out to us today.
All right, this is our last one for the game. We want to name the game. So if you think about in the NFL, you have the Snow Bowl, the Mud Bowl, you have the Tuck Rule game, all those sort of things. But let's name this one. Here, I'm going to give you some options. You can give me any that you might have came up with. First one, the Packed House game. This was the most people that's ever been at a BHP football game. I think going back, thinking about it, I think there was no less than 10,000 people at that game. Some people might think I'm crazy, but go back and watch that video online. But Packed House game is one of mine. First time championship game being at BHP. What a moment there. We got the one more to go game. I think you hear that from Coach Green after the game, as the focus wasn't on just winning this game. It was focused on there was always one more to go. And then lastly, it was played on Black Friday when might have been some discounts. There was discounts on points, or people were paying full price for points because they didn't come easy. But that was my last one, the Black Friday game. Do you have any more that you want to add for the name of the game?
Well, I'm not one of those. I'm not very good on thinking of some of those type names or something. But I thought of, you have hump day on Wednesday. You get over that hump to get there. I think this could have been a hump game, because this was the hump championship game. That once we got over that one, I think we had been close before, but we'd never been that close. And I think that was one of the things. But I like all of them. I like the full house game or the packed house game, because there's no doubt about it. I don't know since that game if we've seen that many people at a BHP football game.
Yeah.
Except
I think that's what. Oh, go ahead.
At William Price that next week.
Yeah. We brought a couple people there too. I think that's what we'll go with. We'll go with the packed house game, because in my mind there was a lot of big plays going, but the buzz, it goes back to what makes high school football so special. Me and you've been to a lot of big high school games, both BHP, other South Carolina high school, Lincoln County. We'd go down to Georgia and watch some big high school football games, but this one in my mind was the biggest one that I've been at. So I'm going packed house game for this one.
I think you're right. I think that's it, and it is. It was the game, and it was one that, even after, what are we, 21 years later, we're still remembering that game, and I can still feel the excitement just thinking about it. how it is. And I think 20 more years from now, you're still going to be talking about that game and how big it is. And I'm sure that, and the thing is, there going to be some more big games in BHP's future, but that game is the one that everybody's going to remember, the packed house game.
Yeah. And that's the one thing I think that took me a while to kind of come to. There'll be more, and I have full confidence in Coach Blackson getting us back there, winning one, but there will never be a first one. And I think that's
right.
One of the ones for the Bears, being that first one. Any final thoughts for the game? We'll talk about maybe this year after in just a second, but any kind of lasting thoughts that you had on this 2004 championship game?
Well, that 2004 championship game was just the buildup of what we thought, from the very beginning. And for me as a father and as a fan, and, for me, just coming through all the games and coming to this game. And I know, being a part, BHP's always got good supporters and all, but the Booster Club being a part of that, and how the Booster Club took part in so many things up to this point. And I think I tell you something, and a thing that worries me now is the feeling that I have there and that you had there that year. I don't think you can have that anymore. I think some of that stay true to your school's gone. So I think it's some good memories and the things that people are going to remember for years to come, because I'm not sure you can, even if you get back to those games, if it's still going to be that way that you had that year, because of the closeness. And I'm going to tell you, the BHP family that you hear constantly, it truly came out in that game and in that year of 2004. We truly were a big family.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think society as a whole, I'm not going to get meta on us for that, but things have changed, and maybe we may have seen last few years on turnout for games and all that. Everybody has more things to choose from going to on Friday nights. That might, back in this time, this was the ticket. This was what you were going to do. But I will give it to Bear fans last year when them Bears made it to the state championship. They showed up and really showed how that Bear community, kind of a throwback to that 2004 packed house.
It was.
That the Bears showed.
We were able to feel a little bit of that last year down in Orangeburg, and it showed, because I would say at least 5 to 6 to 1 of our opponent, and fan wise, maybe even 10 to 1. I don't know, but it just seemed like we had so much, and it goes to show that we still have a lot of pride in the Belton Honea Path area for our BHP Bear football and BHP Bear athletics as a whole.
That's right. Yeah, this is focused on Bear football, but everything you see, social media, in the community. Let's think about the softball team. Back-to-back, go into back-to-back state championships, winning one of them. Think about the baseball team, track, wrestling, baseball, basketball. Like, you're exactly right. This community comes together for athletics, and it's special for me growing up in it, but I think it's special for a lot of people going through it as well. All right, Dad. Yeah. So let's think about that was 2004. Give me some thoughts that you got on last couple minutes on this 2025 team.
Well, I'm excited about what's going to happen this year, because we lost some big players. I mean, some very good
20-something seniors,
yeah, 20, and we lost them, but we have some key players coming back, and I think we've got some pretty good athletes that's going to fill some spots. You don't replace any Hendersons, and you don't replace some of the guys. I can't think right now, the big linemen, man.
Merritt and Oliver Merritt and Ty Kelly. Yeah.
Those type of guys is hard to replace, but yet what we've got some young boys that are going to be coming up, and I've heard nothing but good things. And I even rode over and watched a little bit of the practices, some of the things that they were doing. And I tell you what, I feel pretty good. As Noah at quarterback, and then our little running back I call
MJ Earl.
MJ Earl, and then we're going to have some other guys that's going to step up. It's just like I think you're going to find some people that's going to play. Will we make it back to the state championship game? Hey, it just takes some guys with heart, some guys that want to make it, and the guys that want to put out and play hard. And we've got some opportunities to go deep into the playoffs. And just like always, we've got the community that's going to be behind the players to get them wherever they want to go. That's for sure.
That's right. I think one of the things I've seen coming into the season has a lot of characteristics of that 2004 team, players' willingness to play both sides of the ball. I know I've seen Jakari Anderson playing some wide receiver. We already know Tajay Watson-Martin plays both receiver and wide out, but also seeing some other guys step up on both sides of the ball, which is you always want to put your best 11 out, no matter if they're playing on both sides of the ball. So great to see that for the Bears. And I'm super excited. One of the things that doing the stats allows us to do, we get to spend 4 or 5 hours every Friday night together, and I have fun. It's fun for us to do some things like that. And I thank you for not being able to work in Excel and let me get in and do some of this work with you. I'm excited to do it again this year.
Well, I tell you what, when I started doing this, I don't know 20 plus years ago, when Coach Green asked me if I'd do it, I thought, wow, I'd love to. And I didn't realize how much fun it was back in the days when me and Mark Smith started. And then we had Jim Autry and Jason Holiday came along and helped us out. And then when you started, we were doing it the old fashioned way. And then you got, like you said, you got the computer in there. And so now we just get to argue about where the ball's marked every now and then. And after we get through that, then we have it is a lot of fun, but it is some of the best times of my week when you and I get to spend 4 or 5 hours riding to the games, talking about it, and then just do it. And then being also in the press box with all the other guys at home. And then when we're on the road, we're over there with Joel and his boys, and it's just a lot of fun. And I tell you what, I'm just blessed to be able to do it with my son, and hopefully in the coming days we might have a couple of the grandboys ride with us a little bit.
Man.
So that's what it's all about.
Yep, we'll definitely have to do that. All right, Dad, I do want to thank you so much for this. It was fun. It's always great looking back on these. I think with Coach Blackson, the best is still yet to come. I think there's so much left in front of us, but there's so much Bear tradition and pride that we've seen in the past, and it's great to highlight some of those BHP games. Thanks for being the first. You get that designation, and it was great kicking the podcast off with you.
All right. Well, thank you. And I look forward to listening. And hey, what are we, about 4 weeks away from BHP Bear football?
Yeah, I think we're right around a month. So it's going to be here way before we know it. So thanks, Dad.
All right.
And you probably be on later in the year too, when talk a little bit more about what's going on in the press box with us.
Well, I guess one of my things to say is what I guess that started many years ago. How about them Bears? Right?
There we go. All right, Bear fans, that's a wrap on episode 1 of the Bear Rumble podcast. Thank you for being with us. We went a little over an hour talking about the 2004 championship game, and I just thank you for helping us kick off this podcast. We're going to do some other things during the season. We'll be talking about the current team, looking at what's happening there, but we'll also have some guests on to talk about these past games and other things that deal with BHP football. To our listeners, thank you for riding with us. Be sure to subscribe, tell a friend, and stay tuned for some more classic games, more legends, some more players, coaches, and definitely some more BHP football coming your way. And remember, until the next episode, how about them Bears?